Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Um, I am just waiting for some more people to filter through. So we'll give everyone a couple more minutes as I can see participants streaming in. Thanks for joining this evening. It's very exciting to be able to talk to everybody today about an admissions test that is super important, the TARA. And joined with me today is Jamie, who is our in-house expert on all things TARA. So I will just go over a brief introduction, and Jamie and I will then be leading the discussion on everything you'll need to know in terms of what admissions tests are, the preparation, and the test-specific details that you'll be expected to kind of keep in the forefront of your mind. So I think we've got a good amount of people on the call. So I'm just going to share screen and get everything set up. Do let me know if anyone isn't able to see any of these details. Hopefully the chat box is accessible. Everybody can send over questions and things there. So the way that this talk typically goes is we'll go over some of the key details over the next about 30 to 40 minutes, and we will definitely save some time at the end for questions because I'm sure there will be lots, considering the TARA is a relatively new exam, and it is one that might be on a lot of your minds for the particular degrees and courses that you're thinking about coming up. So to kick off, welcome to your TARA preparation. We're specifically talking about how to maximize your score. So in terms of an introduction, we here at Oxbridge Applications are leaders in higher education advising. We have been around since 1999, and we essentially provide support for all competitive UK universities and courses. So, of course, we're talking about the TARA today, but our advice extends to all different degree pathways, all of the different tests that you could have coming up. So if there are questions that you may have about other options, don't hesitate to ask. We're available in the later part of this call for that, as well as just over the phone or email if you'd like. To support with that advising, we have amazing people like Jamie on the call today, who are tutors in all of these different academic fields, who come in and provide this support from mostly their own experiences, but also years of insight and knowledge and development of different resources and being in and around the Oxbridge and higher education environment. So that's who we are. Essentially, everything we do, all of the resources, they're all informed by research and guided by people like tutors, as well as even more senior tutors, such as former admission staff. So those are individuals who have both been with us for supporting students in their personal statements, for test-specific information, for mock interviews, as well as have been on admissions panels at Oxford, Cambridge, and other universities too. So some of you might also be thinking about Imperial, LSE, UCL. So we have staff from all around. Who am I specifically? My name is Ishwa. I am one of the Oxbridge consultants on the team here. So I may have spoken to some of you in the past. I have a BA degree from Oxford in Arabic and Islamic Studies, and then I stayed on to do an MSc course in Modern Middle Eastern Studies, which is a mostly history and politics and economics related course. I'll just hand over to Jamie to introduce himself very briefly.
Hi everyone, my name is Jamie. I completed my BA in PPE back in 2019, and since then I've been at SOAS University of London, where I completed my MSc in Political Thought in 2021, and I'm now working towards a PhD in politics and teaching alongside that, both at SOAS and, as Ishwa mentioned, tutoring for OA, both in terms of the TARA, but also more broadly across kind of PP and related studies.
Awesome, thank you. So as you can tell from both mine and Jamie's backgrounds, we have a big mix there of social sciences related subjects, and the TARA will very much be touching on that to a degree. So it's quite topical that we have that experience, and we'll be able to leverage that to be able to give you that insight today. So just going to the next page. today's agenda really breaks down into the following. We'll be thinking about what admissions tests are, so why they're important, as well as what they're really used for. That will then bring us on to the TARA structure and specifications, so a bit more finite details about what's included there. And we will finish off with discussion on preparation techniques, so the kinds of tips, advice, resources as well, which are super important to support that learning and that revision. So as I mentioned, there will be space for questions towards the end of this call. So it would be great if we can save any raised hands or questions specifically for that segment, because chances are we'll probably talk about some things that will answer initial queries throughout this process. So let's get started. Admissions tests, what are they in the first place? Lots of you will know that admissions tests are part and parcel of the Oxbridge application process. So they typically are the second part of your application process. You will usually submit a personal statement via UCAS earlier on in your timelines. So for Oxbridge, that deadline is the 15th of October. For non-Oxbridge universities, that will be later on in January. And then admissions test follows on shortly after that, so typically from October to about November time. And admissions tests are essentially more distilled, subject-specific kind of benchmarking assessments that the universities that you're applying to may use to essentially decide who are the more competitive applicants, who they should be shortlisting, and who are just good applicants, because there are a huge number of competitive applications that get sent in every year. And so to be able to be decisive, it's important to be able to compare and contrast different results. So the reason primarily why they're so important is that they are a huge indicator of potential success on a course. And that's why universities that usually are a bit more specific or technical, they will ask for students to sit those exams beforehand. For that reason, then, they are absolutely tests that you should have in your timeline. So you should have them flagged, you should be thinking about them, and you should definitely know where they fall in and around your preparation. And that means that naturally you will prepare a schedule around that. So you will know when you're doing that revision, what checkpoints you should be working towards, so that you can make sure you gain as many marks as possible. And that brings me on to this final point where tiny margins can make all the difference. For lots of tests that you could sit at Oxbridge and other universities, they are really quite niche. So they will be focusing on specific content, specifically within the STEM world, or like the TARA within social sciences. And so your subject knowledge is super important, but exam technique, time management, those kinds of details are also incredibly important. So that's also part of making up those tiny margins. As you can see here, these are the test sittings for the TARA exam this year. So you can see that there's the 12th to the 16th of October for the first sitting. So that will be for candidates who are applying to Oxbridge universities, who are meeting that earlier deadline for their UCAS application too. Then there is a late test sitting from the 4th to the 8th of January. Please do bear in mind that that is not the test sitting for students who are applying to Oxbridge. You definitely need to be doing the earlier sitting for that. So please don't get caught out, because unfortunately, if that's not something you prepare for, you will be on the back foot and your application won't be considered complete. So following on then, if we look here, we can see a bit of a breakdown of course offer rates. And we can see there's a number of different courses advertised. So we've got Economics and Management from Oxford, which sits at a really, really stringent success rate at 5%. Then Computer Science at Cambridge follows on from that. Engineering at Cambridge is a bit higher, around the 14% mark. And then you have more humanities courses such as History, Theology, and Languages, which are much less competitive. Now, that doesn't mean that they're shoo-ins to get into, but it just shows a comparison of the level of competition you can encounter for more technical and specific subjects like economics and management compared to humanities-focused courses. So when you have a course like economics and management, computer science, engineering, where it's incredibly difficult to get people onto those courses, the admissions tests therefore become necessary to help weed out the best of the best, just because of the sheer number of people that universities are trying to filter through. So this is what this diagram serves to show. Looking at this page then, we can also see a helpful breakdown of offer rates for different universities that require the TARA. So one of the more popular subjects is PPE at Oxford University. As you can see here, this is all taken from the UCAS website, so this is public information. You can have a look and look at statistical breakdowns in the past few years. But the first thing we can see are that the grades held by students who are admitted to the PPE course typically sit at around the 3 A-star mark. That is quite common because, as I mentioned, it's a competitive course. They're looking to onboard the best students, and usually those students will have the best academic profiles. Now, you can also see that about 19% of students were offered a place for this course. So that tells you about the level of success out there for this particular degree. Whereas something like computer science from UCL, again, has an entry requirement or kind of the grades held by most of the students who are accepted are 3 A-stars, so on par with the PPE course, but the success rate sits lower at about 10% because it's a more competitive course. It's more oversubscribed to. So these aren't really kind of accommodating numbers is what this is trying to show. They, again, serve the point that it is difficult to decide who is the more deserving or able applicant out of the huge number of people who apply. And this tells you about the likelihood of your chances of success and essentially how you can navigate these more competitive courses by leveraging all of the different comparison points in an application process, such as that TARA. So here are some of the not exhaustive courses where you could be asked to sit the TARA exam. So as I mentioned, PPE is up there. You've also got things like economics and management, many social science related courses. So history and economics, history and politics, psychology, human sciences. And equally at the University College London, so UCL, you've got computer science, some engineering programs, and a bit more of the technical STEM pathways there. This is not exhaustive by any means, and it is absolutely your individual responsibilities to check and make sure you know exactly what the requirements are for what you're going to be studying. So please do not rely on this. Do double check, have a look through all of the requirements. They are advertised on web pages quite widely. So double check. I'll just hand over to Jamie now to feed us in to all of this TARA specific information.
Hi, everyone. So just an overview of the kind of TARA as a whole. So the TARA is a computer-based exam. You will sit it at dedicated Pearson examination centres. And for Oxford specifically, this year it's replacing what used to be administered as the TSA, the Thinking Skills Assessment. But for UCL, I believe this is their second or third year running the admissions test. As Ishwa mentioned, there are two test windows, and this bears repeating. The earlier test window, 12th to 16th of October, is for candidates applying for all universities, including Oxford, with the later window, the 4th to the 8th of January, only being for students not applying for Oxford. And it also bears kind of noting that you can only take the TARA once per admission cycle. It's not a kind of repeat until you get the best score you can kind of process. You will apply for one sitting and one sitting only. If we could have the next slide. So in terms of registering for the admissions test, you do so through the UAT University Admissions Test website, and it is handled directly through that portal. So you will need to create an account on UAT's website, where you will handle everything from registering for the test to paying for the test to booking yourself a slot at a given test center. this website will be your best friend in the application process. It's where you can find all of the information regarding sitting the test, paying for the test, everything about kind of the practicalities of the test itself. And as Ishmael mentioned, it is your responsibility as a candidate to stay informed of deadlines and of requirements. If you, for example, apply for a course like PPE and do not sit the test prior to your application being submitted, your application will simply be discounted, as it will be considered incomplete. So it is your requirement to make sure you have completed all of the required parts of the application, which for the courses listed earlier includes ATARA. So again, just to really kind of re-emphasize the timeline for the TARA, from the 1st of June, so 2 days ago, you can begin creating your profiles. It's just a simple kind of going onto the website and registering. You don't need to do anything more than that from this point on until it gets to the 20th of July, at which time you should start booking your tests. You can book them at a range of test centers across the country, and other kind of key deadlines to keep in mind are the 14th of September and 21st of September, which are the deadlines for arranging or requesting any access arrangements that you may need, and for requesting any bursaries you may need to be able to sit the test. The kind of most important deadline in all of this is the 28th of September, where at which point the opportunity to book a test will close. So you have to have booked a test prior to the 28th of September. And again, like I say, anyone applying for Oxford, the test window for this year is the 12th to the 16th of October. And if you're applying for Oxford, you have to sit it in October and not the January deadline. So on the day of the test itself, like I said earlier, you will attend a dedicated test center. It's a little bit like the test centers you may have attended to sit your driving theory, if you have done so. You will need to, again, arrive with plenty of time to spare. Again, it is your responsibility to turn up on time. If you do not, it is within the rights of the conveners of the test to not allow you to enter, as it would disrupt other participants. So make sure you get there with plenty of time to kind of get ready, check in, make sure you're kind of all prepared. And you will also have to bring some form of ID in order to sit the test. Like I said earlier, the test is computer-based now, and it is in a kind of silent exam room. You will be provided scrap paper, but the entire test itself will be on the computer. So the questions will appear on the computer and the answers will be inputted on the computer. You won't have a kind of printout of the exam paper, but you will have scrap paper or a whiteboard, depending on the test center, to make any notes that you want. The scrap paper will then be collected from you at the end of the test. As there are multiple test days that occur, the kind of conveners want to prevent information from being spread about what the test involves. It's important to note that you will not have access to any materials beyond a scrap of paper and a pencil or pen. So that includes calculators, dictionaries, periodic tables, etc., or any personal notes. You will, if any of those are discovered on you or you are found using them over the test, that can lead to disqualification. So it is just you, a pencil, some scrap paper, and the computer. So in terms of what the test actually looks like, the TARA consists of three individual modules. We'll go through what each module specifically looks like in a minute, but ultimately there's a critical thinking module, a problem solving module, and then a writing task. From this year onwards, candidates must complete all three tasks regardless of the course that they're applying for. It used to be when it was the TSA that PPE students had to sit all three parts, whilst E&M students, economics and management students, didn't have to do the writing task. But they've now changed it so that all students sit all three parts of of the paper. So if we start with the critical thinking section, this is a 40-minute multiple choice exam consisting of 22 questions in which you are provided with a block of text, normally 5 or 6 lines long, and you're asked to identify something about the text. This can be the main conclusion of the text or a flaw or assumption that the text relies upon. It can also include the best counter-argument or the best supporting evidence that can be provided for the argument given in that block of text, or it might ask you to identify an argument that follows the same reasoning or relies upon the same principle as the text you're provided. Like I say, this is multiple choice. You will be given 5 answers. So it will list 5 answers from which you have to choose the most suitable. This section is marked on a curve from 1.0 to 9.0, rounded to 1 decimal place. And given that it's marked on a curve, year to year, different raw results result in different converted results. And it's the converted result that matters. So if 1 year students getting 21 out of this get a 9, whereas in other years, some students may get a 9 from only scoring 20 or 19, depending on essentially how hard the test is that year. In terms of the kind of bare bones of the problem solving section, this is identical to the critical thinking section. So again, 40 minutes to answer 22 multiple choice questions. This section is also marked on a curve with exactly the same scoring process. The difference is instead of a block of text, what you will receive is a series of different logical puzzles, essentially. These include things like shape reasoning. So identifying patterns in certain shapes, unfolding cubes, etc. It may ask you to extract information from a graph or a table, or it may ask you to conduct simple mathematical computations. Ultimately, this section of the test doesn't really rely upon too much kind of mathematical skill. You won't be expected to do kind of complex sums. What this part of the test is really getting you to do is extract relevant information, ignore irrelevant information, and then use that information to very quickly come to an answer. So it's more about which data do you choose rather than kind of complex, convoluted mathematics. And then the final part of the TARA is a writing task. So this is the kind of part of the TARA that is the biggest difference to the TSA. So you will have 40 minutes to complete one essay-style question. This will again be typed on the computer, and there is a hard limit of 750 words. You are not permitted to exceed that. The point of this is to kind of inspire brevity and concision among applicants. And the way the exam is structured is you will be given a prompt, a kind of short quote or short kind of parable, and you will be asked 3 things. First, to explain its meaning. So what does this phrase actually mean? Then to provide what you think is the best counter argument against the sentence, and then to provide a kind of full evaluation of it. Do you think the claim stands up to the counter argument you've offered, or do you think the counter argument actually defeats the sentence? The kind of most important aspect of the writing task is this is not marked by UAT UK. Instead, what happens is it gets sent to admissions tutors at your chosen universities and colleges for them to kind of engage with subjectively. It will be the kind of admissions tutors kind of primary evidence of your writing capabilities under time pressure. So it will be a kind of real indicator of your suitability, especially for the social sciences. So especially if you're applying for PPE, E&M, this kind of writing heavy courses, this will be an incredibly important aspect of the overall kind of portfolio that you provide the admissions tutor. So just some general tips to get us started. ultimately the TARA is going to look like and feel like very different to any exam you sat before. It may, if you have sat verbal or kind of linguistic reasoning exams in the past uh, as part of kind of school applications, the TARA is similar, but much, much more difficult than those sorts of exams. Um, as Ishwa mentioned, most people applying for these the courses in which the TARA is used are applying with very similar portfolios of grades. So looking at a full suite of A stars at A level, or at least predicted full suite of A stars at A level. So the TARA really becomes a major differentiating factor for applications. Um, and one thing to keep in mind is that no candidate is really expected to get full marks in the TARA. Quite a few students often actually can struggle to complete all 44 questions of the multiple choice section. The aim is to kind of get as high a score as possible. So it's not kind of a case of if you don't get 100%, you're not eligible to apply, but it is where you end up sitting along that curve will be a major determinant of your success, especially as it comes to the social sciences at Oxford. So some essential skills to start preparing and practicing whilst you're getting ready to sit the TARA in October. The first is problem solving. So essentially, especially that problem solving part of the TARA, what it asks you to do is in an incredibly short amount of time, identify relevant data to answer the question you're posed. Extract that data and then manipulate that data in order to answer a question. This requires a lot of time management. So, like I say, often students aren't expected to get 100%. Ultimately, there often comes for students a moment in the TARA where they have to decide whether to pursue a question that they're really struggling with or kind of cut their losses and move on. The decision at when to do that is an incredibly important tactic within when sitting the TARA. So working on those kind of time management skills, working on when to know the kind of cost benefit of answering a question versus moving on and answering others that you may find more easy is a really important aspect of the exam. Attention to detail is obviously incredibly important. Often what will happen is within the problem solving specifically, a lot of red herrings will be involved in or provided in the information you're given. So things that are either irrelevant or misleading that you're tended to see through. Often, like I say, the mathematics itself is very simple, but what will happen is there will be a kind of a slight specificity in the question that requires a multiple step calculation in order to kind of catch people out who just aren't paying attention to the kind of complexity of the question itself. So real kind of attention to detail and focusing on kind of highlighting key information and using that is really important. And then as it comes to the writing task, one of the key kind of indicators of success is concision. It's how quickly can I produce an argument that is convincing and to the point, and how can I kind of, with as few words as possible, put my idea across and make it convincing without kind of either waffling on or kind of going off piste. The writing task itself is a very significant departure from what I'm sure a lot of you are used to producing for A-level essays. They aren't looking for you to kind of produce a on the one hand, on the other hand style essay. Rather, what they want you to do is say, this is the kind of most convincing counter argument that I can find. Either I agree with it and here's why, or I disagree with it and here's why. It's a really kind of argumentative, focused type of essay that is very different to the A-level essays that I'm sure you're used to writing. So some resources to be aware of. Like I say, the UAT UK website is your best friend. There are some specimen papers and past papers available on there, but because the test itself is relatively new, it's worth also looking at past TSA papers. Some key differences between the TSA is one, the writing task. The writing task with the TSA looked very different and had a very different time scale. So it was 30 minutes to answer one just kind of basic essay question. It would be a kind of should X happen, or do you agree that why? So it looks very different. The multiple choice section of the TSA is broadly identical though to the TARA. The only difference is you have 90 minutes to answer 50 questions in one block that span both critical thinking and problem solving. Whereas obviously in the TARA, you now have 40 minutes apiece to answer two separate sections, 22 on critical thinking, 22 questions on problem solving. The TSA has been going for, I think, since 2009, so there's an incredibly large backlog of past papers that you can use. There are also a lot of books and other resources that are available both through OA and elsewhere that have a kind of TSA style or TARA style questions that you can use.
Thanks so much, Jamie. So hopefully that's quite clear on the kind of structure, style, resources that you guys should be thinking about before you head into the next couple of months of application season. Definitely one of the best resources that you have ahead of you are your summer holidays. As the term times are winding down, you'll have a stretch of time to consolidate all that you learnt over the last academic year, as well as starting to make a kind of headways on the personal statements that you'll be drafting for the UCAS deadline, and also specifically to start embedding this TARA practice if it's relevant to your degrees. So that would look like doing practice questions, checking the specification for the TARA so that you feel familiar and confident enough to answer on the different parts that are advertised there, as well as specifically trying to do past papers and revision through mock questions, because you won't really know how much you know until you apply that, especially in timed conditions. So on that, apart from all of the resources and tips and skills that Jamie just laid out, some really useful things that are also coming up from within the OA team, so here at Oxbridge Applications, are on the screen. So one of the major things that we do every summer is support students on one-to-one packages of support. So these are tuition packages of various different hours. So you can see we offer those in 4-hour, 6-hour, or 12-hour bundles. And that is where you are specifically matched with an Oxbridge admissions tutor. So that is someone who is a TARA expert like Jamie or any one of our other colleagues, or obviously for whichever tests you might be thinking about, you'll be matched with the equivalent appropriate tutor. Those are all individuals who are Oxbridge educated. They have the expertise and experience to help you really nail the skills and knowledge for that test. They have either done it themselves, they have helped develop resources for those tests, they have been on the side of kind of designing questions as well in some cases, because as I mentioned earlier, we have a real wealth of different expertise and knowledge from our tutors, from our more senior staff who were former admissions tutors as well. So we have a really impressive bank of mock papers that students can also use to help with their preparation. So not only do you have those select number of hours working with a tutor, you also have, let's say, 4 admissions tests that you can then work on as well with them. So those are things that you would either use during your sessions to supplement any of the resources that your tutor brings up, or you can do them in your free time, have a think about the questions that you found difficult or got wrong, and then go over those in your sessions themselves. Either way, you'd be able to figure out a revision schedule and strategy that works best for you with the tutor that you're matched with. And ultimately, these sessions are pretty flexible in that you are working on a one-to-one basis. So you can work with that tutor, find a suitable time for you, and schedule them after school times, on the weekend, depending on their availability. And it doesn't have to be on specific days. It's very much up to your mutual availability. So to get everyone kind of started with that revision, because as I said, the summer is is a very good resource that you should be using. And specifically, we want students to start sooner rather than later, so that if you do have any tricky bits that take longer to really embed or to understand, you are not on the back foot with that. You're not leaving it to closer to the autumn application deadline, you're not going to be stressed, because also it's important to remember that once those holidays are up, you'll be heading back to not only the application deadlines, but also your curriculums. So whether you're doing A-levels, IBs, or anything else, you will have to keep up with the demands of another school year. And that's also specifically where your grades and your performances really count. So doing that work as early on as possible is going to be your best friend. I've put a QR code on the screen here, so if anyone is interested in having a look, you can directly scan this and it will take you to our webpage with all that information. Equally, you can also call us, so there's our number on the screen or the email that you can reach us at, info@oxbridgeapplications.com. And because we really want everyone to make use of this, we actually do have an exclusive discount code for everyone on the webinar. You can use the code here, webinar0306, for a 10% discount on any admissions test packages that you book in until the end of June. So you don't have to use those up by the end of June. You can just book them, and then you can very easily schedule those throughout the summer holidays and make sure that that's just locked in. And again, it's helpful to do this earlier rather than later, so that our tutors who are best placed to help you can dedicate their time towards this, and they can help you schedule out everything that you'll need to do over the next couple of months. Aside from that, then, we have really helpful webinars like today, where we can talk to experts like Jamie to go over this information. But also we have a TARA test specific day coming up on the 23rd of July. So what that looks like is slightly different to our packages of support. It is a online workshop, so full day event, usually between 9 to 5 p.m. That is where you would essentially join the call online, have a welcome chat with the person leading that session. You would then do a TARA mock test in the morning. You would have a lunch break. And then in the afternoon, from about 1:30 p.m. onwards, you would then be in skill-specific workshops and reviewing the tests that you sat earlier in the day. So this is an intensive workshopping session where other students are also attending. You are attending a webinar similar to this, receiving all of that information and essentially going through questions specifically with somebody. So that's also available on our website to take a look at. It's one to keep in mind because, again, it's in July, so right before the holidays, and that's super helpful maybe session to go to first, get a taste of what the TARA feels like, actually have a go at practicing one of those mock papers, and then you might have a better indication of how much additional practice you might need on any of those one-to-one packages. So feel free to take that information down or give us a call or email if you'd like to talk about it anymore. So just to wrap up then, hopefully everything that we explained was clear and helpful, but just to really nail that in, the earlier the preparation begins, the better. That's really key. You need to give yourself time to adjust. It's a new style of test, as Jamie said. There are some kind of cheeky question styles in there with red herrings as well. So you want to give yourself enough time to get used to it, to learn a bit of discernment on how to really pinpoint what topic or questions being asked underneath the kind of prompt that you're given. And the best way to do that is to make use of resources there. The TARA is a relatively new exam, but there are resources like Jamie pointed out earlier. So definitely make use of them. You can find those kinds of questions and you should be using them to practice. And essentially practice makes perfect. Don't be put off if initially you find it quite difficult or it doesn't look like you're doing too well. That's really normal. These tests are designed to be a step higher than the kind of work and level that you're accessing at schools at the moment. So it's designed to push you, it's designed to challenge you, and that shouldn't scare you. Definitely give it your all and give it some time to really develop, basically. And if anyone has any other questions after this chat as well, you're very welcome to book a free video call with myself or one of my colleagues on the team here with the QR code that's on the screen. So those are 20-minute complimentary Zoom calls where we can go over specific questions if you have a more fiddly situation or specific questions to you that you would really like answering in a private space. So you can go down that route as well, or otherwise give us a call or message us here. So thank you, everybody. Hopefully that was helpful for you. Whenever you guys are ready, start sending in your questions on the chat function. You are very welcome to ask anything and everything. No question is silly or too minor. In fact, I can see that we do have some questions already coming through. So maybe, Jamie, if I start reading them out, we can go through some of them.
Sure.
So I think one of the first questions we've got is if a student is planning to study economics and management at Oxford, they're wondering how difficult it'll be to actually get onto a course like that. Is there a low chance of success for them to get in?
So in terms of E&M, I would say it's obviously one of the more difficult courses to apply for at Oxford. And that's why something like the TARA is so important. Similar, it's kind of comparable to PPE in terms of application success and the kind of average candidate portfolio. So you're looking at the majority of students that are applying for E&M having a AAA star at A level um, result, and therefore the kind of TARA really is the one of the key distinguishing factors. So in terms of trying to kind of assess your likelihood of success at E&M, one of the best things to do is sit a TARA early, take a couple of past paper TSAs, and just try and kind of assess where you're sitting at, and reach out for support if you need to kind of work on that.
Thank you. That's super helpful. We've also got another question asking, what happens if you don't do too well in the test? Is there a pass or fail mark, for example?
Sure. So there's no pass or fail mark. Like I said earlier, it's marked on a curve. So it's really dependent on the kind of caliber of your application pool. A rough, because the Tara is so new, it's only been used twice now for UCL and it's never been used by Oxford in the past. We don't have the statistics available to give an accurate kind of measure of the score that is required to successfully apply, particularly for Oxford. Whereas all of that kind of information is available for the TSA. So every year, the Oxford publishes a full explanation of every mark achieved by every applicant and the TSA, where the minimum mark for a successful application, the minimal mark for an interview. So that really helps kind of helps you gauge your chances of success. One thing I would recommend doing then is like I say, sit a TSA paper early. The benefit of doing that is you can look at the score conversion that you achieve. A general rule of thumb, though it varies slightly from year to year, is that for the TSA specifically, a score anywhere above 70 is good, anywhere above 75 is great, and anywhere above 80 is exceptional. So those are the kinds of metrics to use when you're trying to evaluate likelihood of success in preparation.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can maybe quickly answer the next question that I've just seen come up. Is there a cost attached to the 23rd of July Tara Day that we're running? Yes, that is bookable on our website, and all of the details are on our webpage, and that's priced at £225 for the full day of 9 to 5 p.m. working on those sessions with a tutor, as well as having those mock Tara papers. So I believe there are two that you can sit one during that webinar and then take one home at the end of the day, and then practice and essentially mark that yourself to really see where your learning has made strides from that one session. Okay, following on from that then, does medicine require the TARA? Or does it vary from university to university course? As far as I know, the medicine courses do not require the TARA. That is the UCAT exam that you would need to sit. Am I right in that, Jamie?
Yeah, so the TARA is limited to, at Oxford, it's social sciences courses. Though we caveated the list that we provided earlier wasn't exhaustive, it is, I'm pretty sure, almost, um, unless one has been missed off, I think it is pretty much exhaustive. So at Oxford, it is PPE, E&M, history and politics, those sorts of courses. And then at UCL, it's computer sciences, um, artificial intelligence, those sorts of courses. As Ishwa rightly said, for medicine, you're looking at doing either the UCAT or the EMAT depending on the university you decide to apply for.
Yeah. And in most cases, this question is also asking, are there additional tests that you might need to do apart from the TARA? In most cases, no, it's quite rare. And I personally have never seen that be a requirement for students or applicants. You will have your entry requirements that are advertised that you should definitely be meeting. So those will be either your A levels or your equivalent IB curriculums. And there are equivalents of those requirements for pretty much every syllabus out there for students from different backgrounds and countries too. So you can definitely check that to double check, to just make sure about what is the expectation for you specifically. But no, apart from the personal statement and the specific exams that the course advertises, you won't really be kind of asked for any additional papers at all. So you don't need to worry about that. There is only the interview stage, which hopefully, if your personal statement and your TARA or any other exam results are shortlisted as being competitive, you will then be asked to sit an interview with a Oxbridge professor or two. And those details will be sent to you directly by your colleges and university. So that usually happens from November onwards. Students start finding out after those exam results have come through from their TARA and other tests, so that the tutors can assess who are the more competitive applicants to then invite in to see. So hopefully that answers that question. We also then have some questions about what other resources are out there if a student isn't able to get on to one of the packages that we run or one of the test days that we run. As Jamie mentioned earlier in the call, there are absolutely other papers and questions that you can have a look at online. So previous TSA papers as well would be super helpful to look at. And otherwise, really just pour over the specification for the TARA exam is what I would say. Make sure you really know the topics which come up in that specification and feel as confident as possible, because that is what is going to formulate the different questions which will come up in that paper. So a question then for you, Jamie, is how much time would you recommend a student should be spending over the summer break, maybe each week on TARA revision?
Sure. So, in terms of past papers available, like I said earlier, there are now, I would say, I'd estimate maybe 15 to 16 TSA papers that you can do. One thing I'd recommend not doing is kind of front loading that work and kind of burning through all of those resources early on. What I would recommend doing is maybe each week do or maybe either each week or every other week, depending on how well you're doing, sit a paper. And then what's really important is spending the time to go through it. So don't just kind of mark it and think, okay, well, I got a 70 converted score, so I can just put that one away. Go through, and what I'd recommend doing is redo the questions that you got wrong and see if you can correct your mistakes. This is a kind of really key skill in developing those kind of analytical skills that will help you. So maybe a few hours a week just of really kind of focused, rigorous practice is the kind of best way to prepare. And then as you get closer to the actual exam, we'd be looking at kind of starting to do maybe one every couple of days just to kind of get you in the flow and ready for that final paper.
Awesome, thank you. One other question we've got is, would the critical thinking and problem solving sections be considered more than the writing section for a maths and computer science application at UCL? Is there a
Sure.
way?
So in terms of individual weightings for the sections, the universities don't disclose this information. They will, like I say, disclose the average score of students that were successful. But ultimately, for a more kind of computer science based course, you can assume that the problem solving and critical thinking sections would be slightly more important. But the writing task is still really essential. The writing task, like I say, it's not about kind of bringing in loads of information and demonstrating your kind of historical or philosophical know-how, which would be relatively irrelevant for a maths and computer science application. Instead, it's showing your logical reasoning. Can I produce an argument and develop a logical defense of it? Can I kind of create a logical train of reasoning that allows the person reading my essay to, in 750 words or less, agree with me by the end of it. So those kind of skills are still very important for a computer science or maths-based course. So it's still definitely are important to the overall kind of application portfolio.
Thank you. And would you say that the red herrings that could come up in the Tara questions are the same as what were the case in the TSA, for example?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say broadly the question types and the question structures that you will face in the first two sections, so the critical thinking and problem solving sections of the TARA, map pretty identically onto the TSA. So they haven't changed the content or the type of questions that you face. They've just essentially changed the overall structure. So it's just 22 questions in each rather than 25 and 40 questions for each section rather than an hour and a half for all of them.
Thank you. I think this is a question that I've seen come up more than once, actually. So, would there be any subtraction of points for any incorrect answers given? Or are you better off sort of filling everything in?
So yeah, fill everything in, definitely. There's no negative marking, it's purely positive marking. So it's always worse if you can't kind of work out a question, don't leave it blank, guess, and if you have time at the end, come back to it and see if you can tackle it again.
Nice. If a student is in year 11, would you say there are any specific skills that they could start practicing? As they won't be sitting the TARA exam immediately, they'll have about a year over year 12 to prepare for it. What would be the skills that you would suggest are important to lock in then?
I would say so. Start doing some verbal reasoning work. So simple things like if you're kind of looking at applying that or looking at preparing that early, things like reading the newspaper and working out, okay, here is a block of text. What's this writer trying to get me to understand? What are the key takeaways from this article or this argument that really help me understand what the writer thinks? Are there any assumptions or things they're not talking about that are really important that would undermine their argument, for example? Those kinds of soft skills, soft critical thinking skills can be really helpful later on when applied for the critical thinking section of the TARA. In terms of problem solving, things like shape reasoning, numerical reasoning, etc. There's hundreds of books available out there that kind of go through those, whether it's directed towards kind of school applications or university applications that are kind of useful early stage resources.
Nice. I guess one question that I can answer that I've just seen come up for the Tara test day that we're running in July. It is open to anybody to book. You don't have to be working with us on one of our packages already. It is publicly bookable, so you can have a look on the website and just go ahead and finalize that booking. It's really not discriminatory in that way. And it's very useful to the majority of people who need to do Tara preparation. So I would very much recommend. Um, is doing well in the TARA generally more important or desired for economics and management at Oxford than having 4 A stars or 4 A levels?
Overall, I would say yes. TARA is a really key and kind of the key uh, aspect of your application process. One thing to bear in mind is that although getting 4 A stars at A level can help distinguish you as a candidate, you will not be offered on 4 A levels. Oxford only offers on 3, and by and large, your offer will be triple A. So it's not that you need 4 A levels to hit your offer, and it's unlikely that you will need A stars to hit your offer. Rather, you need to kind of get as well in your A levels as possible to distinguish yourself among the many other candidates that will be doing the same. But that said, the TARA and doing incredibly well at the TARA will overall distinguish you more than sitting a fourth A level, especially if that A level isn't likely to produce a fourth A star. Yeah.
Thank you. Um, if a student has specific testing accommodations, such as extended time, does that get reported back to universities or impact the way that their answers are received?
Not at all. It's as far as I'm aware, universities are required by law to make reasonable accommodations in application processes, and any negative inference made as part of that would be a violation of law. So universities will entirely kind of allow for any reasonable accommodations and not allow those to factor into any decision making by the university.
Absolutely. Those accommodations are in place to make sure that everybody can perform on an even playing field. So if you are entitled to them at all, I would really recommend that you use them because it will help you and support you to bridge any gaps. I guess we have time for a few more questions, so I'll just have a quick look. If you end up sitting the TARA and you do well in it, and the university or course that you've applied to doesn't explicitly require it, would that score help your application at all?
As far as I'm aware, it won't factor into any application outside of those courses that specifically require it. So even if you're applying, say, for PPE at 5 different universities, Oxford is the only university in the country that requires the TARA. Therefore, it is the only university in the country, for PPE, that would then consider that as part of your application. All of the other universities that you would be applying for PPE would just look at your A levels, your personal statement, your reference, and the UCAS information that is provided to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the same, that universities aren't allowed to sort of give favor for things that they haven't explicitly asked to see as part of your application. So I wouldn't worry on that front. How would you recommend a student should structure their essay?
So in terms of the structure of the overall essay, and I've seen a couple of questions about the essay, so I'll also just answer those quickly as well. So in terms of structuring the essay, ultimately what they're looking for is a kind of really pithy, direct to the point explanation of what you've been given. So if the question is a kind of quotation by someone, for example, like laughter is the best medicine. What is meant by this? Quickly explain it, maybe with an example. What is the best counter argument to this? That's where really your kind of analytical skill starts showing. So really kind of place emphasis on that. There you want to just list one counter example. They're not looking for you to say, okay, here are 5. They want you to kind of really stick to the instructions. So here's one that I think is the best counter example. And then the kind of most important part of the application or the essay is what comes next, which is the evaluation. So do you think that counterexample works? Do you think it is convincing? Or do you actually agree with the statement itself? Is laughter the best medicine? And that's where you have to kind of really show your analytical skill across a couple of paragraphs that, again, really kind of emphasize that kind of point evidence explain structure that you will have learned at A level. So here is one key point. I'm going to explain it and evidence it and move on to another point. That really kind of concise, focused, analytical type of writing is what's what they're on the lookout for. Just in terms of a couple of other questions about the writing task, for E&M, just to clarify, the writing task is now required. All candidates are required, as far as I'm aware, to sit all 3 aspects of the TARA in a way that they weren't for the TSA before. In terms of scoring the writing section, this varies from university to university. Like I said earlier, it's sent directly to admissions tutors, and admissions tutors are the ones that evaluate it and rank your responses. Those rankings normally are available through things like freedom of information requests, but they are not published freely. So whilst your score for the section 1 and section 2, the critical thinking and problem solving, will be sent to you and provided to you after the application process is completed, your writing task score will not be given to you unless you seek it out through something like freedom of information request.
Thanks so much, Jamie. I think we are just at time now, so I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there for some questions. But I believe we've covered a lot of different things, so hopefully all of the answers that Jamie has given will answer most of the things that are on your minds. But if there's anything that still hasn't been addressed, or if you have any particular questions that are personal to you, then as I mentioned, you are very, very welcome to book in for one of those chats or give us a call or send us an email, and we'd be more than happy to help. And essentially, good luck. I hope that this has been useful. All the best for everyone with your revision, and hopefully we'll see some of you and be working with some of you over the next couple of months to get that thorough revision in. Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Jamie.